This is the Menlo Park laboratory of Thomas Alva Edison that's now in Greenfield Village near Dearborn, Michigan. Here, a century ago, the electric light bulb was developed. The light bulb was just one of the thousands of inventions to come from the rich imagination of this man, this genius, Thomas Alva Edison.
Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration.
So said Edison when he was a man. He was born in this small house in the town of Milan, Ohio, in 1847. Al, as they called him in those days, didn't have many friends. He stayed alone much of the time. He did a lot of watching and wondering, but you never really knew what he was wondering about. Once he wondered, what happens to a barn while it's burning? He would set fire to his father's barn to find out, and never forgot the whipping he received. Was he watching ducklings? That didn't mean he had to be thinking about ducklings. He might be wondering, what's a warehouse like? To find that out, he explored one and fell into a pile of wheat and nearly smothered. Al's mother, Nancy, sometimes wondered about him. Many years later, he would write,
I discovered early in life what a good thing a mother was.
Al's father, Samuel Edison, owned a small business in Milan. Sometimes he just couldn't understand his son. Sam thought he lacked ordinary good common sense.
My father thought I was stupid, and there were times I almost decided I must be a dunce.
One night, Al was very late for dinner. His father searched everywhere for him. Finally, he came to a neighbor's barn. In the dim light, Sam Edison was surprised to find Al patiently sitting on a nest he had made. The nest was filled with eggs. Al's father thought this was very strange behavior. Just what did Al think he was doing?
I had watched mother geese and hens hatch eggs many times before. If they could hatch the eggs, why couldn't I?
That made no sense at all to his father, but it did to Al. Even at the age of 5, he was observing and experimenting.
We live and grow by new knowledge.
The Edisons moved to Port Huron, Michigan, when Al was 7. He went to school for 3 months, but he became seriously ill with scarlet fever and never went to school again. His mother taught him to read and gave him his schooling.
The good effects of her training I shall never lose. Her years of experience as a school teacher taught her many things about human nature and especially about boys. I was a careless boy, and with a mother of a different character, I should have probably turned out badly.
By the time Al was 13, he was reading everything he could.
My refuge was the Detroit Public Library. I didn't read a few books. I read the whole library.
A corner of the cellar in his home was his first laboratory. This is where Al taught himself the things his mother didn't know.
The first book in science that I read when I was a boy was the first I could really understand.
In a chapter about electricity, Al read,
The simplest mode of exciting electricity is by friction.
To find out for himself, he rubbed a glass rod with a piece of silk cloth. Sure enough, he found that he did get an electric charge that would attract certain things.
To see for myself for 1 instant was better than learning about something I had never seen for 2 hours.
Although his mother was pleased with her son's interest in learning, she wasn't pleased with the strange smells that were coming from the cellar. The chemicals were messy, she thought, and dangerous.
My mother's ideas and mine differed at times, especially when I got experimenting and mussed things up.
Finally, his mother agreed he could keep his chemicals, but he would have to make sure no one else would handle them. She was right. He remembered that some neighbor children had gotten into the cellar and had been tampering with his things. That was a problem. So, to keep people away from his chemicals, he labeled all his bottles poison. Not too scientific, perhaps, but he worked out a secret code so that he could know what was really in each bottle. Hour after hour, he would perform simple experiments, exploring the wonders of nature and finding practical ways to solve problems, just as he would throughout his life. But as he continued his experiments, he found he was making more and more trips to the store where he bought his chemicals. An apothecary's shop, a kind of drugstore. But chemicals were expensive. It would take money to continue his experiments, more than he had. Al had a new kind of problem to solve. He would have to find a way to earn some money. In the early 1860s, a branch of the Grand Trunk Railway was extended to Port Huron.
By a great amount of persistence, I got permission from my mother to go on the train as a newsboy. The train left at 7 a.m. and returned again at 9:30 p.m.
Al made the round trip every day. He sold newspapers and food at each station and on the train.
Every morning, I filled 2 baskets from the Detroit market and would sell the contents to the passengers, screaming, "Newspapers, apples, sandwiches, molasses, peanuts!"
If people were in a buying mood, he could earn as much as $8 a day. He always gave $1 of his daily earnings to his mother. He spent the rest on books and chemicals. Even though he couldn't use his laboratory at home very much anymore, he didn't have to stop his experimenting. The conductor of the train let him set up a laboratory in the corner of the baggage car. There was quite a bit of time between stops. He used that time to continue the experiments that were so important to him. Al also enjoyed tinkering with mechanical gadgets. He bought an old broken printing press and fixed it. He decided to use the press to print a newspaper for the train. In the same baggage car where his laboratory was, he began to print the Weekly Herald. He gathered news items for the paper from friendly telegraph operators at stations along the way. How did he learn to set type and work the press? He taught himself. Al's Herald was the first newspaper to be published on a moving train. In Detroit, Al picked up his regular newspapers at the office of the Detroit Free Press. One day in April 1862, during the Civil War, he saw a late news item.
The Battle of Shiloh was in progress. If I could send ahead to outlying stations a hint of the big war news, I could do a better than normal business when I reached them on the train. The people would be eager for the newspapers. I had made friends of the station agents, who were also telegraph operators. I wired ahead, asking them to post notices that I would have newspapers with details of the battle. When I got to the first station on the run, the platform was crowded with people. One look at the crowd and I raised the price to 10 cents. At Mount Clemens, where I usually sold 6 papers, the crowd was there too. I raised the price from 10 cents to 15. When the train reached Port Huron, the end of the line, I was met by a huge crowd. I yelled, 25 cents, gentlemen, I haven't enough to go around. I sold all out and made what to me was an immense sum of money. It was then it struck me that the telegraph was just about the best thing going. I determined at once to become a telegraph operator.
About this time, Al began to lose his hearing because of an accident on the train. But his growing deafness didn't prevent him from hearing the clicks of the telegraph. With instruction from a friendly station master, Al quickly learned this new skill. He was only 15, but in a few months he would be a full-fledged telegrapher. And as he grew up, Thomas Alva Edison would never stop being curious, never stop learning through observation, never stop doing things his own way.
I never did anything worth doing by accident, nor did any of my inventions come by accident. They came by work.
He invented hundreds of useful products. The first phonograph. The carbon microphone. This was first used to improve the telephone. The mimeograph. The Edison effect tube. This led to the vacuum tube, which improved radio broadcasting and helped television develop. And is one invention that probably did most to change the lives of people all over the world. The electric light bulb. Out of the mind of this genius came thousands upon thousands of ideas that made our world so different from the world of his boyhood. Thomas Alva Edison.